Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today I'm very excited to take a look at Nave 2nd Edition, which is now available to anyone who missed out on the Kickstarter. This is the premium version of the book, but if you want to, you can also get the standard edition of the book if you want that awesome Peter Mullen artwork. Look at that. It's just gorgeous looking. Also now available is a number of zines, including Summer's End and Other One-Page Adventures, which is a collection of 12 one-page adventures, 6 hexes, and 6 dungeons that you can drop into pretty much any fantasy role-playing game to explore. We have Maze Rats, which I've published in the past, but now has an awesome new cover, and of course, my adventure, The Waking of Willoughby Hall. Links to all of these will be in the description below. You can get them in PDF form at DriveThruRPG or at itch.io, or you can get physical copies at the Swordfish Islands web store. One of the things I love about the premium edition is not just the gold foiling, but the way that it has this dungeon map that has been physically impressed into the front cover. You can see it in the light right there, and you can actually feel it under your fingers. It's pitch black because, well, there's no light in there. You got to bring your torch. Inside the front cover, we have a rule summary of all the basic rules of the game, and we have the same thing on the back cover for a few more rules that are a little bit less frequently used. I would take this page and the front end pages and print them double-sided as like a handout, hand it out to your players, and they'll be able to pick up the rules of the game really quickly. All of the interior art for the game is done by the fantastic illustrator Peter Mullen, and boy, is it pretty. We'll see lots of it as we go through here. A quick introduction here, introducing you to the way that I like to play, though of course you can play the game any way that you want, and the random tables. This book is packed with D100 random tables. There's 75 of them last time I counted, and they cover virtually everything that you would need to build a fantasy world. This is especially true when you combine them in different ways. You can generate millions or billions of possible combinations. The goal here is really whether these rules are for you or whether they're not for you. The random table should provide a really useful toolkit. It's the toolkit that I use when you are prepping adventures and even when you're running games on the fly and you need ideas quickly. Here's a summary of what game masters do and what players do in this game. It's really useful, I think, for players who are relatively new to role-playing games, especially if they are new to old-school role-playing games, which often have a different play style than standard D&D. So for game masters, you want to do things like let the players guide the action, make impartial and consistent rulings, immerse the players in the world, signpost dangers. You don't want to drop damage on top of them. There should be opportunities for them to think their way past problems. Players should be taking initiative, they should be asking questions of the game master, and especially applying tactical infinity. You should not be thinking with your character sheet, but thinking with the items that you have, with your environment around you, with who your allies are, and imagine that you are in the world and you need to use all of those things to your advantage. There are 6 ability scores here, rated from 0 to 10. By default, they all start at 0, but you get a couple boosts right at the beginning. You have 3 points, and you can distribute those between your ability scores, so they'll start between 0 and 3 usually, or you can randomize them if you want to. The way that I've set it up is to try and make sure that no particular stat is a dump stat. So strength is good for fighting if you want to be a fighter type character. Dexterity is good for sneaking around and dodging. Constitution is useful for everyone because you get more slots to carry items with and also makes you a little bit tougher. Intelligence makes you a better magic user. Wisdom is the ranger ability. It's good for ranged attacks and checks requiring perception and willpower. And charisma is the cleric ability. It's quite useful in this game because it affects things like initiative and persuasion and the number of companions and patron blessings that you can have. This is a classless system. The kind of character that you are is going to depend on the items that you're carrying, what your careers were, and the ability scores that you choose to improve. So it's very freeform. As your character grows and you gain XP and you level up, you can slowly maneuver them, so to speak, stat-wise, into one archetype or another, or combinations of archetypes. It's really up to you. The game is designed to be very compatible with old school D&D, so any adventures from the OSR should work very well in Nave with very little changing, if any. It is a slot-based system. You start out with 10 slots to carry items, and you gain another one for every point of constitution that you have. Your slots are also going to be used to help absorb damage, because once your hit points go to 0, then any extra damage that you take turns into a wound, 1 wound per point, and fills up one of your slots. So as you are more and more injured, you'll be able to carry less and less things, and you'll have a harder time escaping from your situation. My advice is generally once your hit points go to 0, it's probably time to start retreating before you start losing all of your equipment. Here's our first random table. We have 100 different careers that you can choose from. These can give you a bonus in certain circumstances when the skill, so to speak, that you're undertaking matches your career. So if you were trying to pickpocket someone and you had a career as a cut purse, you would get a bonus to that. You were actually going to pick 2 careers that you were in before you became an adventurer, and that's going to give you a total of 6 items that you can start with. There's also a bunch of standard equipment that you can add to your inventory if you want. As in a lot of old school D&D, you gain experience points by recovering gold from dangerous places and bringing it back to civilization. The way that ability checks work is very straightforward. You'll roll a d20, just like you're familiar with. You will add one of your ability scores, which again start at 0, but could be as high as 10 by the time you're at a high level. And you try and hit a target number, which is usually 16, though of course the Game Master can adjust that to whatever they want. There's also a little piece of advice here showing how if you want to, you can kind of reverse the math to make it so that players are the only ones rolling, if you don't want the Game Master to do any rolling for the monsters. Totally optional, but some players like to play that way, so it's there for them. My advice for lore checks are that checks are not necessary for a PC to recall lore. PCs automatically know all common knowledge and any specialized knowledge covered by their careers. Any other knowledge must be discovered in-game. The goal here is to get players out and exploring, and I don't want to hide information behind checks. A principle I live by is to give players information. Give them more information than you think that they need, because they're going to need that information to make good decisions and actually play the game. Similar principle here applies to search checks. So hidden things are either automatically discovered after enough time is spent searching, usually 10 minutes for dungeon rooms or a full watch for wilderness hexes, or they cannot be found without taking in-game actions. I want there to be a simple risk and reward here. You want to spend time and risk and more random encounters to search this room? Totally fine. I will just tell you everything that a reasonable search would discover there. If there's something that's really secret and hard to find, I'll probably give you a clue as to where it is, but then you will actually have to interact with the room to get it. We have rules here for traveling and for weather. Traveling uses the hazard die system. So what this is that every time you move, there's 6 mile hexes is the default hex size that you're moving across. You would roll a d6 and that tells you what happens. Maybe there's an encounter, maybe you are fatigued, maybe there's a depletion where some of your food goes bad. There could be a travel shift where the weather changes in some way. There are signs that could lead to another encounter or tell you what's coming up, or maybe nothing happens. What this does, it takes a whole bunch of different checks that might be occurring and puts it all onto one die just to speed things up. The next 4 random tables are here just to help you flesh out your wildernesses and your exploration. So we have lots of signs here that could be signs of nearby encounters. So maybe ritual remains or trails or voices of something that's nearby. And we have locations, structures, and place traits, which can all be combined to make interesting locations. Like maybe there is a floodplain on which there is a chapel that is cursed. Or perhaps there is a canyon and there's a graveyard at the bottom that is glittering. Anytime you see an italicized entry on one of these tables, that is referring to another D100 random table that you can either roll on or just scan through and pick something. If you have the PDF version of this, you can just click on the page number and it will take you straight there. We have the delving rules right here for dungeon crawling, similar to our hex crawling rules, except that it has an entry for burn for when your torches burn out. I have rules for how fast you are traveling through a dungeon and how that affects your exploration. So if you travel at standard crawling speed, 120 feet per turn, which is standard for OSR games, that's extremely slow to travel that far in 10 minutes. So I just say if you're going that slow, you automatically detect traps that are nearby, and it's more about figuring out how to get past them. If you want to move at walking speed or at running speed, you can go real fast through a dungeon, but there'll be a lot of disadvantages. You won't see the traps coming. The candles that you're holding could burn out. You're going to be surprised by all of the encounters. You're not going to be able to map your environment. So really decide how fast you want to go and whether you want to take the risk and reward that comes with that. Do you want to take a candle with you in the dungeon? Candles are great. They last for a really long time, basically an entire dungeon crawl, but they don't have very much brightness, which means it will take you longer to search rooms. Torches, on the other hand, are a lot brighter, but they take up more space in your inventory, and they're going to go out when a 3 is rolled. After this is 8 D100 tables covering everything you would need to help build a dungeon. You have delve shifts, the things that might change in a dungeon. We have rooms, room details, and room themes, which you can combine. Like maybe you have a courtroom that has a coffin in it, and the general theme is riches. Maybe it's a very jeweled coffin. We have a table for the form of the whole dungeon itself, and 3 of my favorite tables, which are for generating new traps. You have a trap effect, you have a hazard, and then you have a mechanism. Combine these together and get something weird. Perhaps the danger is that there is a whipping thorns, and the mechanism is copper wire. You can also brainstorm traps by rolling 2 or 3 times on the mechanism table to get a bunch of different little mechanical pieces, and then work out how those things work together to cause the trap to function. This gives the players an actual way to figure out how to disable it. Random encounters can be more exciting if you roll on the activities table, which gives you 100 different things that the people that you run into happen to be doing at the time. They're not there just sitting around waiting for you to kill them or for them to kill you. They might be crafting something, or processing around an area, or robbing someone else. In combat, initiative is resolved with a charisma versus charisma check, because charisma is the leadership skill, and you're commanding your entire group and trying to get them to go in the best order. Attacks work very similar to normal D&D. You're rolling your strength or your wisdom for range attacks, trying to hit an armor class. If your total is 21 or higher, then you also get a free maneuver. Maneuver being something like pushing or stunning or blinding or breaking someone's gear. And you can also do a maneuver with just a normal ability check. If you want to hit your enemy so hard that you break your weapon, you can actually double the damage dice being used. And there is a morale test for when their morale breaks. Important thing to use because most enemies shouldn't be fighting to the death. Spellcasting is pretty different than standard D&D because each spell is contained in a whole spellbook, and each spellbook takes up one of your item slots. So if your wizard wants to have 10 spells, you have to fill up 10 slots with that. This is going to make it pretty difficult to be both a wizard and a fighter, because if you're a fighter, you want to have a lot of armor, and each point of armor that you are carrying on your body also takes up an item slot. Each spellbook can only be used once per day, so you can't spam the same spell over and over. You're going to have to get creative with all the spells that you've picked up. And this does come with 100 pre-created spells. They're all short, they're straight to the point, and they have generally effects that are not damaging. The way that I prefer magic to work is that if you're a wizard, if you're a spellcaster, you are someone that is manipulating the world rather than just casting lightning bolts and fireballs. It's a good type of character to be if you like problem solving. And if you like being a magic user, boy, are you going to like these tables. These are heavily expanded from the tables in Maze Rats and allows you to generate I don't even know how many possible new spells. So first you would roll for spell formula down here. Maybe you would get wizard's name, element, form, and then you would roll on those tables and combine those words. So wizard's name, maybe it is the wizard Gallifex, and you have to combine element and form. So element, it is a frost, and the form is a dragon. You cast a spell, you get a frost dragon. If you're going to generate spells this way, of course, you have to work out with your game master exactly how it works, how long it lasts, and all of that. This works especially well if you want to use the optional rule for chaos spellbooks, which is spellbooks that cast a random new spell every day. So this prevents them from being too overpowered. Because if you get a really overpowered spell one day, it's not a big deal because you can only cast it once anyway, and you'll get something random the next. In all of my playtests, players love this. If I give them the option to take a pre-created spell or a random one, even if it could be really bad, they always pick the random ones because it's just fun to see what you get. We also got tables for mutations, delusions, disasters, magic schools, relic magic. So there's some advice on how to deal with deities, and it's much more relationship based. To cast cleric magic, so to speak, you have to have a relic of that deity, talk to that deity at a shrine, and do a mission for them. And if you do, and you're in their good favor, they will give you a blessing of some kind, which you can create using the magic tables pretty easily. You're going to want to stay in their favor and follow their motivations and their goals, which can also be generated later on in the book in the NPC section, if you want to make sure that you keep those powers and you aren't punished. Lots of domains here for generating gods. It's usually best to combine 2 of them to get something weird, and some symbols for those gods. Little alchemy system here for hunting down creatures that have magical abilities and then refining those creatures into potions. Lots of potion options right here, along with textures, taste, colors, and ingredients for making your own fun potions. Equipment list, tools, miscellaneous items, books, clothing, fabrics, decoration, treasures, materials, weapons, item traits, everything you need to make any kind of item, especially magic items. You can just pick something from this list and then just give it a magical effect from the magic tables. You want to build buildings, I have guidelines for that. For warfare, I have a little mini game right here, unless you want to actually play out a full war game on the table, which you certainly could. But if you want to resolve it quickly, this is a little mini game that allows you to make some tactical decisions and just see how the battle plays out. By the way, I love this piece of art up here. I think it's one of my favorite that Peter Mullen did. This next section of random tables is all about the city, so city themes, events that are happening in the city, like maybe there's a fashion trend or a serial killer on the loose, street details for when you're having chase scenes in a street and you want all sorts of interesting obstacles in the way. Buildings, of course, to put out there, inn names and food. These are really fun. So you can make an inn name by just combining these 2 tables together, like the floating flea or the terrible thistle. Or you can combine 2 things from this table, like the door and dragon or the cat and candle. Make some new food like fermented crayfish or roasted partridge. Any good city campaign is going to need factions, along with what those factions are like you have sewer people that are very predatory, or a social movement that is quite fanatical. A mission generator that those factions might send you on, along with a reward that you can get afterwards. If you're just hanging out in the city and you have some downtime, you can go carousing and maybe get some more experience points, but you could have a mishap along the way if you get a little bit too drunk. You can also gamble with your money and even do some career training, although this can take months of time. So you may have to kind of set a character aside and play a new one while the other guy is training. Guidelines for hiring some new recruits if you want hirelings, mercenaries, experts, and companions, all of which have different roles that they might have in the party. And a big old NPC generator here. Male names, female names. The surname generator is fun. You combine these two together. So you could get Cotton Cloth or Pinkerthorn or Stewmark. Of course, you got personalities, NPC details, professions, goals that those NPCs might have, so you know what they're up to and what they're trying to achieve. Assets and liabilities. So this is great whenever you're bringing someone onto your crew. What did they add to your crew? What problems are they going to possibly cause for you? Use relationships to build a web of relationships between the different characters in your game so that they all have some connection to each other that could be manipulated, mannerisms that they might have, and we have our monster section here. A monster stat block in Nave is very similar to what you might see in Old School Essentials or any other OSR game. They're going to be very compatible. There's a short bestiary right here just to give you an example of what monsters might look like. It's not supposed to cover absolutely everything. You can use any OSR bestiary with Nave, no problem. And of course, I have tons of random tables for generating any kind of monster. You want to start off by maybe combining two different animals, because most monsters are combinations. Maybe it's a donkey porcupine. Maybe it has some weird organs that has like a dragonfly wings, or it has horns, horse tails, large ears, warts, walrus tusks, whatever. If you want to make them a bit weirder, start adding on monster traits, like maybe they're smoking or they're stretchy, and there's some powers like chameleon skin or a sleep aura, or of course, you can use the magic tables to add on more magical stuff. We have their scents, their sounds, so you know when they're sneaking up on you because you can hear them coming, what tactics they use when they fight, what weaknesses can you exploit. Near the back here, I have a gameplay example with just 2 pages walking you through what a section of gameplay might look like so you can see a lot of the rules in action. And a lot of people said that this was very useful to them. I have a designer's commentary. So if you're into game design, I walk you through my game design choices. Why did I make the rules the way that they are? How do I look at rules in a role-playing game? I think this part here is really important. Much is often made of whether a game's rules are good. But in my view, the actual content of a game, the situations, locations, events, NPCs, etc., often has a bigger effect on the experience than mechanics. Nave's random tables, which expand on the tables from Maze Rats, aim to make creating game content a fast and even entertaining process that makes the world feel surprising and alive. I can't build the world for the GM, but it can at least provide all of the pieces to do so. Each section in the designer's commentary also credits the books and the people that helped inspire me come up with those rules, because I think it's really important to cite your sources and to credit the people who had a lot of these great ideas that I would never have come up with on my own. We have your basic character sheet at the back of the book right here, although I have seen a lot of people creating some really fantastic looking alternate character sheets that they've put online for free, so I would keep an eye out for those. And at the back of the book, I have some really fun maps by Kyle Latino, who is Map Crow on YouTube, just to give some examples of what a Nave dungeon or a Nave hex crawl might look like. Hopefully it inspires some people to go out and create your own. Well, that is it for my look through of my new book, Nave 2nd Edition. I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope that you found something useful that you might like inside it. And if you did, check out the links below where you can get it in PDF or in print form. And keep an eye out for some future videos where I'll be looking through some of my other books that are also getting released, like Summer's End. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time.